Welcome to CivilNet. My guest is Nayiri Nahabedian, a member of the Glendale Unified School District Board of Education and a professor of social welfare at California State University, Los Angeles. She is currently in Armenia, and I had the opportunity to observe how psychologists, social workers, and professors deal with the post-war situation in Armenia. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here with you, Ani.
So could you first tell us what it means to be a member of the board of education at the Glendale Unified School District? What is the body's main mission, and how many students are you dealing with?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So Glendale Unified School District is responsible for the schools in Glendale and La Crescenta, the public school system, where we have 30 schools. We have 26,000 students of very diverse backgrounds, including Armenian Americans. We are responsible to make sure that students are getting what they need to be able to plan for their future, to be successful. And we're also responsible for the employees, the teachers, the cooks, the cafeteria employees, the secretaries, the custodians, and all of that. So I've really had the fortunate opportunity to be able to serve and be of service in that capacity and make sure that our kids are getting what they need to be prepared for either college or a career as well, because they're both good paths, but we want to make sure that their foundation is set, they have some creativity, and they have the ability to plan and think about what they want to do. So one of the things we were able to do is with our sister school in Glendale Unified School District is our children at Glendale Unified School District wrote handwritten notes to the Berdzor students who are in the Yerevan area, who are relocated here. And so I was able to bring the handwritten letters for the kids here, and we had a gathering where we had the students and some of the teachers were able to come, and Ms. Anahid, who's the principal, who led it, we were able to have a gathering where they saw each other, a very strong desire to see each other. They had missed each other, and we were also able to give small gifts to the students, and a small gift for the future programming of that school. So we have a principal there who's wanting to do a little bit more and wanting to bring those kids together in some sort of an after-school program. So we wish her well as well.
And how many students are you dealing with on a daily basis?
So at Glendale Unified School District, I am in the capacity of being a Board of Education member where I'm setting the rules rather than being in the classroom. The time when I'm in the classroom is I'm visiting and I'm walking around. And at Cal State LA is where I do my teaching. So at Cal State LA, I teach courses and I have my own students, and it varies. I have 39 students in one class, for example, where I teach community organizing. In another class where it's a seminar, I have 16 students where it's more of a discussion class where they're preparing to graduate and be in the field. And currently, those Cal State LA students are in the field doing internship themselves.
Let's move to Armenia now. You spent a few weeks in different social establishments in Armenia, in schools, giving trainings to the care providers about how to deal with their own traumas after the war. So what are your observations about these workers? What is their mental situation?
Right, so it's been a humbling experience for me to be here and be able to meet my colleagues across the globe, to meet social workers here who are really doing courageous jobs, and mental health providers in general, psychologists, and also met teachers from Berdzor School from Artsakh who are now here in the Yerevan area. And so what I first noticed is that they're doing courageous work, right? So it's post-war, and what we need to understand is that the context is COVID previous to the war. And what we need to understand is that during COVID, during this pandemic, is when the Azeris attacked and the Azerbaijan government attacked. And so what we had is a situation where people were very optimistic and worked hard to be able to provide for anything that was needed for the war effort, for the protection of the people who live in the areas, for Armenia and for Artsakh. And everyone who lives here, made a champion, a great effort to really be of service for that effort, and had a lot of hope and had a lot of optimism about the outcome. And so when things really shifted and the optimism fell, and the decisions that came to be known, and not to get into those decisions, but to stay with the sort of how are people impacted and the emotional piece, is that it was a great despair and a great defeated perspective, and a sense of hopelessness and surprise and anger, and a lot of the emotional things that we see with grief and loss. And so what we have to understand is that there has been concrete losses, concrete loss of life, a concrete loss of human life, of the young people who fought valiantly and died, and not only young people, but also experienced people and middle-aged and older people who died. We have a lot of uncertainty. There are soldiers whose situations is still unknown. They have neither returned home, nor families know about their whereabouts or their well-being. And you also have the uncertainty of what will happen next still, in terms of attacks and bombings. And so there are different layers of difficulty, one on top of the other, for everyone here. And particularly then we come to a place where we have workers who they themselves have been impacted through the pandemic, through maybe folks that they've lost, but they've definitely lost, everyone has had loss due to the war. And so those teachers, social workers, psychologists now have to tend to care for others, and also nurses and doctors, really anyone in a capacity where they're taking care of people. They have to sort of try to balance what's happening with them, what's happening with their own families, right? Because they have soldiers who have died, and they have uncertainty in their own families. In fact, I met someone in my work here where she listed, she does drama therapy, and she listed the relatives who perished, who died during the war. So you have individuals with great loss and grief trying to care for others. So the term wounded healers comes to mind, right? So those who are wounded themselves but are really doing the healing work. They're really warriors, they're wounded warriors. And so how do we attend to them as they're attending to others? So that's something to, first of all, notice, right? To make note of it, to bring it out into the light, and rather than not think about it or to ignore it.
So I wanted to ask you, related to this, if they are not healed themselves, if they remain wounded, and what would be the consequences for themselves and for the people they are providing services if they don't learn how to manage their own post-war traumas?
Yeah. And that's a good question. And so how does one deal with their post-war trauma? And Armenians as a people have had trauma generationally, right? The genocide, displacement in the past, war 30 years ago, right? So there are individuals who have family members who have fought in the past and have fought now. So you have multiple layers and multiple times where difficulties, and I'm using a euphemism when I use the word difficulties, when difficulties have come upon a group of people where they have had to continue and have to go on, right? And at the same time have wounds. And so wounds can heal. They will leave a scar, right? But they will heal, and there's a process for it. And one of them is to really bring things up in the forefront. Not necessarily have to talk about the details all the time. People can sit together in a quiet way, but know why they're sitting together and mourn. So part of it is mourning, part of it is really experiencing the grief, and we have to understand that people experience grief differently. There's no one way to experience it. So there is a myth, for example, related to grief and loss that says if you don't cry, you're not experiencing it deeply enough. That's a myth. People can go through a very difficult loss and not shed tears, at least not in the beginning. There's also a myth that says if you must stay strong for things to work out, you must stay strong, and so that's. And it's all right to stay strong. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, people are doing that. But it's also important to note that it is all right to feel down. It is all right to cry. It is all right to experience, to grieve. You know, nervil, huzvil, those things are, and I've heard are normal. And I've heard in my sort of interactions where someone in a sort of a leadership role, when kids were together, said, you know, let's not be sad. And so I wonder, right, when can people be sad, right? When can we create opportunities as a communal mourning? And we have those things, right? Yerablur is a place where people go to.
It's a cemetery. It's the soldiers' cemetery. Yes.
So it is the cemetery of the soldiers, and I have received examples in our discussions. For example, in one of the trainings, a young woman said, you know, I go there and I cry, and I feel better. You know, she herself does not have a direct relative who is there, buried there, lays there, but she feels like that is a place where she can go and grieve, and those tears and that grief helps her mourn and helps her move through it. And so we need to create opportunities, make sure that there are enough opportunities where people can collectively, communally mourn, and also individually be able to mourn, and know that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to fall apart, right? And to give space for those things, and know that there are stages of healing, right? So and so those stages of anger, of bargaining, of despair or depression, we can come to a place where there is a bit more acceptance. And what I also notice here is anecdotally, is that people are moving forward. They're doing their regular work, keeping up with whatever they need to keep up with, and they're doing it because they have an intention, you know, for the future of the children here, for the future of Armenia, to make sure that that they're going to show up for the next generation, and they have a commitment to those who have been martyred, who have died. And so there is a very personal intention to do well and to be of service. And that goal, that intention, is a positive thing. It's a positive thing as well.
And if the mourning process is not fully done, or if the process of healing does not take place, what are the consequences for these workers? And I guess it has a direct impact also on the people they are taking care of. What would be the consequence?
So they themselves can have compassion fatigue, secondary trauma. They themselves can, and those things can show up in different ways, like depression, like irritation, like anger, and so irritability. And however, it seems that organizations are doing what they can to try to really be there for their employees, and the self-care types of trainings that I have been able to share, and we've shared things together, because really my role has been a facilitator to bring in my experiences and also have everyone share their experiences, because there's a wealth of information here, and an individual is the expert in their well-being, and the community who lives here is the expert in their well-being. So I get to be a partner in that, right? And so it's been an honor to partner and share those experiences of what will help. And mindfulness and focusing on the breath has been a proven method to for general well-being, really, and also in times of stress. And if we build this capacity to be mindful and to have some exercises related to mindfulness and breathing and noticing the breath and coming to the present moment, right? Then we're able to do some of that healing and the work that needs to be done. You know, the mind is a good thing, right? We can think things through, but it's also quite problematic in the human system, because it likes to worry constantly. It's constantly chattering. It's constantly thinking about the past, or thinking about the future. It's rarely in the present moment. And whenever we're in the present moment, whenever we come back to what's happening now, we get to see that what's happening right now, that it's manageable right now. But if we think about what happened in the past and we worry about the future, and it's constant, it becomes a great difficulty, and it takes a lot of energy out of ourselves, and it makes us tired and exhausted. You know, I often say that the biggest lie is worry, right? The biggest liar is this, the worried part of us. It thinks that if we constantly think about something, that it's going to be fixed. So it's all right to plan, right? Figure out, if you have a difficulty, what can you do about it? If there's some action to take some action, and if there isn't, to try and do something else, and either change your actions, have a walk around, change your thoughts, shift your thoughts, and that will impact your feelings. Those I work with tell me the things that they use that help them. Music, walking around, you know, the music is a big one that I've heard, you know, either listening to music, playing music, and walking around or talking to people and sharing their difficulties. So there are multiple things to be able to do. And so the more we bring forth sort of to the surface what's happening, and also exercise some techniques of self-care and general techniques as well, that's good for anything, which is really getting enough sleep, eating well, drinking enough water, walking around, and then also the additional techniques of mindfulness and meditation can really help mood, functioning, and thought.
So you just answered to the fourth question, but during the war and after the war, let's talk about the diaspora. Many Armenians in the diaspora were wondering how they could participate in Armenia to overcome this hard times. As someone who took the initiative to come here with the AVC, Armenia Volunteer Corps, what would you suggest or advise to others who are willing to do more, maybe on the ground?
Right, and I did come, and I'm working with the Armenian Volunteer Corps, and it is for people who are 32 years and older, who don't need to be Armenian, don't need to speak Armenian. It's helpful, but there are ways to share one's experience and expertise here. And although donations and money are of course important, but human capital is also important. People who are here on the ground and being physically present, what I've noticed and what I've been told is that it matters to people who live here. You know, being physically present next to those who lived through the war and who experienced those difficulties and still experience the uncertainty and the repercussions. Being on the ground here, I'm told, matters, and so it matters to me, right? And I would say that many people in the diaspora want to do something, want to make a difference, and they were doing quite a bit themselves during the war, right? I remember in street corners in Glendale, young people making anything and selling anything to be able to raise a little bit of more money and send it to Armenia, or send it to Armenia Fund, or through individual capacities, etc. And so it was also a great despair when all of that sort of halted. And so people are trying to find ways to have a positive impact, and they're doing multiple things, and so this is one of them. So I'm very satisfied with being able to be here, and I would encourage folks to be able to come. Armenian Volunteer Corps needs a minimum of 2 weeks. You can also stay for months to be able to make a difference, and it's not impossible. It's doable, and there's a great sense of desire for that to happen from Armenians here, and it's one way to be able to contribute. Yes.
Thank you, Nayiri, for this talk.
I was happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for watching, and continue to follow CivilNet.